trapped inside the devil's den. Trapped inside the devil's den.
Way too sweet. I ran out of half and half this morning, and I was using my coffee mate creamer, which turns out I've outgrown. I just don't like sugar in my coffee anymore. Anyway, hello and welcome. My name is Nicole. I am the creator of the Unwanted Book Club channel here on YouTube, and today I wanted to open the discussion on pantsing. Originally, I was going to release part 1 of my Cyborg Tinker video, but I ran out of time editing the first part, which is basically going to be kind of a retelling slash thoughts I had while reading the book the first couple of times. But anyway, before I released that video, I decided kind of as a last minute venture, I was going to release another video that I've had in my back pocket. I was planning on releasing this video in February sometime, along with a couple of other ideas I was kind of juggling with at the time, and just I didn't have the time to look into it. I do eventually want to create an essay video on plotters versus pantsers, because there's definitely a turf war going on when it comes to these two types of writers. If you are a writer, usually you will fall into one of these two categories, unless you are straight up in the middle, in which case you use both methods to plot, plan, and then kind of move your way through growing the story. If that makes any sense. I believe most of the writers on AuthorTube are plotters, just for your information. The whole platform is definitely made for plotters and people who plan out their novels to a T before they even sit down to write the first draft. I believe Alexa Dunn is the only one that I've heard admit that she has a little bit of pantsing qualities. There might have been a couple of other smaller AuthorTubers that admitted that they are also pantsers, but I definitely feel like people get the wrong idea when you tell them that you're a pantser. And I kind of wanted to discuss that because it's another thing I'm sick of. And I kind of wanted to open the discussion on that. Now, this is not to say that plotters don't have their fair share of judgments. I'm sure that part of their judgments for pantsers is partially in result of pantsers making fun of plotters for having to plot every single thing out in their novel instead of being able to improvise, and that's not real writing. If you have to plot it out, you're writing to market, blah, blah, blah. It's a whole spectrum. First of all, you don't have to fall into one extreme or another. Like I said, I think a lot of people are kind of in the middle. Even a lot of pantsers will admit that while they're pantsing the story, they have a good idea of where they want to be. They are just trying to figure out how to get there. And that's the kind of writer that I am. I am mostly pantser. I definitely have plans and I definitely plot out my stories to a sense, but I have to be actively writing it to get the ideas to further the story. I do not know why. It's magic. For me, it's straight up like something else is controlling me and I just don't have any control over where my story ends. And here is where pantsers tend to get made fun of for. I've heard AuthorTubers make fun of pantsers claiming that they're not the ones in control, claiming that they're just living their childish fantasies, that they're reckless writers. I've had some writers tell that to me to my face. I've also heard of plotters who typically make fun of pantsers for not being able to let go of their childish whims and sit down to just be the more adult type of writer, as if the more mature writer is the plotter.
News flash.
I've read a lot of books by AuthorTubers on here, especially the ones spouting this nonsense. You're in no place to talk. You have as much work to do in your story as any pantser that I have seen. This whole attitude toward pantsers it's not going away. It's not all AuthorTubers. Like, there are some on here who believe that pantsing is a legitimate way of writing. It's the ones that claim that they're best-selling novels that seem to act like they know everything just because they used YouTube to garner an audience and then use that audience to spike sales for their book that they hadn't even published yet, to be able to sell a number of copies and then boast that they are best-selling authors. It doesn't count. So, to those writers who don't really think that pantsing is an adult or mature form of writing, I'm here to rebut. I have tried planning and plotting my novel out. I have tried the basic outline. I can't do a complete detailed outline because I always go off the rails. But here's the thing. I can only plot and plan so many things, and when I tend to plot and plan, it tends to be in correlation to what has been done before, i.e. tropes, i.e. cliches, things that I have seen other people do. If you're a pantser, you tend to write with more intuition. That's just how we are. We go by our gut, and I feel like that is another reason why some plotters kind of have this bitter resentment. Again, it could be a result of bitter resentment because some pantser somewhere told them that they weren't real writers because they don't use their gut. But the reality is, no matter what type of writer you are still a writer. Like, nobody can take that away. But this judgmental, self-righteous attitude towards pantsers is really getting on my nerves. It's something that really invalidates me as a writer. It makes me feel like I'm being pushed off to the side, I'm being set back, and it does kind of make me feel like you don't respect the fact that I am a writer just because I have a different method of writing. It's a form of discrimination, and it's disgusting. So, for example, I recently finished the rough draft of a sequel to a trilogy which I'm hoping to publish sometime in the next few years. I finished writing the sequel in this trilogy that I am writing, and it is a rough draft. Now, if you've watched my rough draft videos, a rough draft is a rough draft. You're not really meant to keep it. As a pantser, it's more so to kind of help me get a feel for where I want the story to go. And again, this only happens if I'm actively writing it, because I already had an idea of where I wanted it to go. I already had certain sequences planned out. I already had scenes in my head, certain things I knew were going to happen. But the thing is, other events occur and you start playing with different pathways. You start playing with different characters. You start playing with different circumstances, and you wonder, well, what if I took this route? So it's kind of like a trial and error way of writing the first 1 to 2 drafts. I don't even get serious about the writing itself and the flow and the pacing and everything until draft 3. 1 and 2, practically throwing out. To the point where my rough draft is usually less than, I'd probably say, 200 pages. It might be around 150, which is very small, but it's also very large for a rough draft, considering that I tend to just toss out 90% of it. But it gives me a feel for where I wanted to go, and this is exactly what happened. Now, I was kind of worried when I started writing this book because I have no idea, and I still only have a faint idea of what I want book 3 to be. Again, I know where I want to go. I know some of the scenes, I know some of the circumstances, I even know how I'm going to start and how I'm going to move forward, but I don't quite know what it's about yet. I'm getting an idea, and that, thankfully, was all stuff that I garnered from writing the second book. It's not that pantsers don't have a complete lack of idea of what they want to do. A lot of it is more so learning to understand and empathize with your characters. It's learning more so the intuitive way of writing. And it's very hard. It's very hard to describe, but I can't explain it. I can't explain why things click when they do. If you're a pantser, you know what I mean. It's weird. It is beyond weird because you're just like, why didn't I have this idea before? Even for like the side book, which I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be writing yet, I already knew who the main character was going to be and what this book was going to be about, but I didn't know why. Until I finished the last chapter of the second book, I learned why. I don't get it. I don't understand, but that's the best I can describe it, is it's going off of gut feeling, and it's going off of intuition, and it is valid. There are many successful writers out there who are pantsers, many successful writers who will stare at a blank page because they have no idea of where to go, and that is dreadful, because if you can't move and you're a pantser, you're stuck. procrastination too, and what really causes that, because I know that it can be a serious problem, especially for writers who are pressured by contract, pressured by deadlines. Especially if you've already pitched an idea, you realize that you're either not ready for it, or it's something that is just, it's not speaking to you. And I don't understand, but that's exactly how it feels. I think there was one author tuber on here who was laughing and ridiculing panzers because we say that our stories do speak to us and our characters speak to us, and she was kind of mocking the fact that it's a childish mindset. It's intuition. It's more about understanding, it's more about empathy, and it's more about being able to relate to the characters, being able to understand them, understand where your story is going, and understand where they're coming from. It's working out those differences, working out those conflicts, and the things that we might not want to face about ourselves, we might not want to face about other people. Because when I'm writing, it's not so much that like the characters are directing me in my head, telling me where they want to go, but it's more like following them. It's hard to describe. It's more like kind of giving them a nudge and then following them where they go. It's the best way to describe it, because I know where they should be, so it's like I kind of nudge them in that direction, but then the dialogue just comes out of nowhere. The other characters come out of nowhere, like the one that I finished with in my second novel. I had no idea that that was going to be a thing. I had an entirely different character in mind, and then all of a sudden it was just like, oh, this would heighten the conflict. Oh, this is the MC's main form of blackmail. This is her motivation for book number 3. And then this character is the reason why she has to be the main character in book number 4. It's not something that can be really described. It's not something that a lot of people are going to understand. And I guess it is something that a lot of people feel like they have a right to ridicule because it sounds ridiculous. But it is how it is. I feel like that's where a lot of that spark and a lot of that inspiration comes from. We are kind of blessed in the fact that we don't have to spend the majority of our time planning a novel, so by the time we sit down to write it, we're exhausted, we're drained, completely unmotivated, because we've already done all of the hard work. It's more so like with every draft, new things come up, new details come up, new experiences, because either we're bored and we're just playing around with different circumstances and different ways of doing things and end up turning out better, or we go back to the original. Whether you're a panzer or a plotter, you're still a writer. I don't think that any one type is better than the other. I think one focuses more on preparedness and getting ahead, and that's just how they're able to make things work. And I think that the other one works best through intuition. I've tried the plotting method. I've tried planning things out. I will have brainstormed an idea for like a good year and a half before I sit down to write it. Pretty sure of where I'm gonna go, and then as soon as I start writing, it takes me in a completely different direction. But I will say this. Very, very rarely do I regret the new directions taken. I'd say a good 9.5 times out of 10. The new directions that I get while writing make more sense. They complete more plot holes. They end up creating new conflicts, can be repurposed for the character's arc, and a lot of times they actually reveal the themes, they'll reveal the character's arcs, what they actually have to work on, and they'll also kind of reveal the point of the story and the message within, which is kind of the hardest thing to look for when you are writing, is because it's something that's supposed to be subtle. I don't think a lot of writers sit down with a theme in mind. I think it's just something that kind of comes up after you've already finished, and after you get a good idea of what the story is really about. Because you have this exterior picture, you have an adventure story, you have a fantasy story, you have a romance, and essentially you know what it's going to be about on the outside. But then as soon as you start working on the characters' arcs, as soon as you start working on the world building, you start recognizing that it's what it's about. It's kind of on the outside. It's what you would tell people that it's about, because if you were to tell them, well, it's actually about heartbreak and betrayal, or it's about politics, or it's about not judging a book by its cover, like it's something that's so vague that you wouldn't tell people like that's what it's about. Like that outside picture is what you would tell them, and that honestly is what a lot of people would see. But then you have the inner workings of it that is kind of the motivation and kind of the point of your story, because you can have an adventure story and miss the point, or not have a point if it's not relayed through the story in just the right way for the reader to pick up on, which Cyborg Tinker, I will say, had probably, I thought I had 3 themes, but now I'm thinking it might have 4 or 5, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Half of them were on the nose, half of them were forgotten about after like the first half of the book, or they really didn't do anything with it, so it was kind of just fizzled out by the end. I think there's a lot of stuff on here that a lot of writers have left to learn. There is a place for newbie advice, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there's a reason we're sick and tired of hearing about the same thing. Is because that is the easy part. That is the easy stuff that's easy to put out. It's easy to digest. It's stuff that a lot of people will agree with, and it's not really going to challenge you very much, and it's not going to require a lot of thinking to have to put together, especially if it is stuff that you've done 2 years ago and you're just essentially recycling the same content and recycling the same material. What are you really giving your audience? Not just on YouTube. What are you really giving your audience when it comes to reading? From what I have read of the stories that I have read on AuthorTubers here, I can pinpoint a lot of the problems. I can pinpoint a lot of where the problems are coming from, and I can also pinpoint how those problems could have been resolved. It's not the fact that their books suck that bothers me. It's the fact that they're not learning anything. It's the fact that they're not willing to learn anything to be able to teach that to their audience. Panzers might even have to go through more drafts of a novel to be able to find the story, because it takes so damn long, which didn't occur to me when I was doing my Rough Drafts Aren't Hard video until like after I posted it, and I was like, this might be just 4 Panzers. Plotters make it sound like it's only like 4 or 5 drafts, but they also plan everything out, so maybe it only takes them so many. I feel like Panzers have to go through a lot because we write by intuition. We have to constantly be writing to be able to find that next step in the story. That doesn't mean that we're not real writers. It doesn't mean that we're not serious about writing, and it certainly doesn't mean that we're spending all of our time playing pretend just because we're too lazy to sit down and plot our novel. I've learned more from my writing experiences than I ever did when I popped on the AuthorTube. I watched AuthorTube videos because it was nice finding a community that I felt like I could finally relate to, but I was already like 5 or 10 years ahead of all of their advice by the time I came up on it. You learn through action, you learn through practice, you learn through making mistakes, recognizing those mistakes, and then determining to do better and to improve. But you're not going to improve until you recognize that you still have a lot left to learn. You still aren't there yet. I don't think any of us will really be there yet. We can just keep getting better, keep trying to improve, and keep taking steps forward to become better writers. That's the journey of life. Like, it's not even just for writers. It's just how life is. But anyway, that is my little tangent. It's certainly not scripted. It's certainly not something that I want to just like leave it at that. I do have a couple other videos that I kind of wanted to get up as soon as I do some more research, but it won't be for a couple of years when I can afford to do that research, because as I said, this year and possibly next year will have to be easy videos because I'm getting my life in order. Trying to stay consistent. I am trying to upload bi-weekly, I think, knock on wood. So far I'm on track. I'm kind of proud of myself, but it's going to take some time. Eventually I want to get a better setup. I want to get a better camera. I want to get a better mic. I want to look better and have a consistent outfit instead of always looking like
Ma, there's a weird cat outside!
But you know, that also comes with time. It comes with learning what you need to do to improve yourself, not just as a writer, but as a YouTuber, as a creator, as a person in general. I don't think that plotters know it all. I don't think that panzers know it all. I think that this whole egotistical argument of who is a more professional or more mature writer is absolutely ridiculous, and I think we should be doing better than that, especially for an audience. There are plenty of panzers also watching you for your advice, and it's kind of discouraging when you hear this author tuber that you might have respected at one time really kind of make you feel like you're a lesser writer because you're not doing it their way. With that being said, if you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe and hit that notification bell if you're willing to wait for more. Leave a comment down below, let me know if you're a plotter, if you're a pantser, and what you think of this whole debate. Hopefully I will see you guys in my next video.
The demons you forgot about. In the blind spot sitting in the bed. Now I'm making up beat. Invisible to me, yeah. Corrupted souls don't know. Got black moon behind the drywall. Couldn't even see, even when you bleed. So now